Welcome to Die Hard on a Black, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Daylight.
It's Die Hard in a tunnel.
So you were new to this one, I gather.
I was, based on, yes.
a new discovery.
Was it a new discovery for you?
No, I'd seen it once, but it wasn't like one that I cherished or anything.
Okay.
I'd seen it kind of. I remember when it came out, I was kind of like, I don't really.
It was definitely like a.
Sure, I'm up for this one.
Sly's doing kind of a middle picture.
Yeah, it's like this has 3 stars written all over it. Like, it just felt,
maybe 2.5.
It's a real throwback.
It's a real throwback.
This movie to like the disaster pictures of the 70s.
Yeah, and also it weirdly has something going on it that kind of blew my mind the more I thought of it.
Mind-boggling theory about this that really was very.
Is it mind-boggling or is it? It's
more mind-blowing. We'll get to it.
Let's get to it.
But stick around because it's worth it's worth hearing. But I want to ask you about how do you feel about those movies from the 70s, the disaster movies of the 70s?
I don't have a large relationship to them. I think I have more of a relationship to like the spoofs of them, like Airplane or like, Airport's on Netflix right now, and I put it on last night, and I gotta say, with no disrespect, they just feel real slow and long now.
The old disaster movie. You're talking about Airport.
Airports, yes.
Okay.
Airport is on Netflix right now. I put it on last night. I was like, like a 3-hour prestige-y kind of like slow build. They just hadn't quite. They were for a different.
They
age.
hadn't adjusted to the go-go 80s.
Yes, that's right.
Well, because it wasn't the 80s, right?
They're slower pictures.
They have all the worst attributes of the worst 70s movies.
Right.
Like slow, sincere, like self-righteous.
Yes.
Worthy. And
they feel like important. They're important.
They
movies.
think they're important, but they're not.
They're like a certain type of Oscar movie that you still get, where you're like, okay, cool, I get it. Like, yes, that's and it's like. You'd rather a movie that like actually explores the themes as opposed to like pointing at them.
Well,
right?
like Towering Inferno, I bought the Blu-ray and I watched it.
Can I borrow it?
Actually, yeah, because I fucking hate that movie.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
care if it gets scratched.
Yeah. So you're saying I can use it as a frisbee.
Do what you want with it. Throw it out the fucking window. I watched Towering Inferno when we started this show.
Right.
Because it was an important film to watch as it directly affected Roderick Thorpe's writing of Nothing Lasts Forever, which went on to be adapted as Die Hard. So I was like, great, I'm well up for this. Towering Inferno, classic movie, 2 incredible movie stars and a bunch of others, McQueen, Newman, and the list goes on and on and on with loads of other incredible actors in that movie, and it fucking sucks. It is so boring. It is so, and it has this weird self-righteous energy that's like, hey, if you guys if you skyscraper builders don't like think about your wiring, then, as if this was like an epidemic of buildings that were just like setting on fire in the 70s. It's as if it was like a social issue.
Right.
As if it was like a social justice drama. And it's like, this is a ridiculous soap opera.
It also
takes like 3 hours to get these fucking idiots from one building to the next.
They haven't really figured out how to make the characters sing in those movies. Like, and it's not a disaster movie, but a movie I think about a lot in that genre is Backdraft.
Yes.
Which is like a melodrama first and like sort of a disaster fire drama second. And it like what makes that movie work is the acting and the writing is like,
and also
really
the writer of that was actually a firefighter himself.
So the verisimilitude,
it has real authenticity to it. Whereas the Towering Inferno, I find like a bizarre relic, and the reason it really hit me harder was because at the same time when we were starting out the show, I watched the original Taken a Pelham 1 through 3, which is from the same era and is totally current and cool as fuck.
Yeah.
And is still, so it's not
there's
just
a visionary behind that movie.
It's not just movies from the 70s are like bad and boring.
No, the 70s is arguably one of the greatest decades in film history.
And other movies like French Connection or whatever feel very contemporary in some ways. In other ways, not so much. Or Assault on Precinct 13 feels a very contemporary movie.
I love that movie.
Or they're all from that mid-70s era, and they're all kind of die-hard
New Hollywood
antecedents.
Yeah.
But Towering Inferno and those kind of movies, I have to say, I have a hard time with them. And I'm just like keeping it real here. Usually I'm a little bit more nuanced, but I think they're kind of bad. So I think it's interesting that in the 90s, 2 decades later, filmmaking has completely changed. Like those films are anything pre-Jaws is a kind and pre-Star Wars is pre-blockbuster, is pre the modern blockbuster era, which were like faster paced.
Well, not only that, we're post-blockbuster, we're post the franchiseification of things like Rocky, and the fact like Rocky 1 and 2, it's kind of like, oh, curiosity. Once you get to Rocky 3, it's like and just to relate it to Stallone, it's like, oh, this is now a franchise with like that's like trying to work in the milieu that it exists in. And you get into the 90s and you have the post-Tarantino and your post-Speed, like this is a really movies have completely changed.
Exactly. That's why I find it so strange that in 1996 they made this movie and were kind of it's such a throwback and is so kind of dated.
Yeah.
To come up with something that was as cool and current as Speed in 1994, and then 2 years later to make something that is this sort of sedate.
Well, this feels
and corny.
Yeah, this feels like it could be a little bit. There's like elements of this that feel like Speed, and then there are elements of it that make it feel really out of date. But should we get into
before we go too far?
Top line facts, fast facts. Let's do a fast fact check
because there's some interesting stuff about it. Daylight was released in the US by Universal on December 6th, 1996, so a Christmas movie. 2 weeks after our last film, Star Trek: First Contact. 8.5 years after Die Hard. Written by Leslie Boehm and directed by Rob Cohen. It was produced by David T. Friendly, Joseph M. Singer, and John Davis, legendary producer of Predator, which was, of course, directed by John McTiernan, amongst many others. It stars Sylvester Stallone, Amy Brenneman, Viggo Mortensen, J.O. Sanders, Stan Shaw, and Barry Newman.
I once saw J.O. Sanders play Hamlet.
I was going to say, looking him up, he's like a big stage, like kind of a legendary
very
stage
good
figure.
Very good. Not Hamlet, excuse me, Macbeth. He played Macbeth.
I was going to say, like, I can't really see him as Hamlet.
He was Macbeth, and he was very good. Boston Common Shakespeare.
Yeah,
like
significant figure in American theater.
Yeah.
I love him as
he's
great.
He starts off the dick of the movie.
He's absolutely the dick of the movie, and he's going to be nominated, I can assure you of that. But this was what was really interesting to me, because I've just kind of bashed this genre a little bit. But on an estimated budget of $80 million, it grossed $159.2 million, almost doubling its budget.
Well, it's Sly.
Big hit.
It's Sly.
It was a big hit.
It's the last temptation of Sly, this movie.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment. It didn't do quite as well critically. There were some moderate positive reviews, including one from Roger Ebert that I enjoyed. He gave it 2 stars out of 4 and said, Daylight is the cinematic equivalent of a golden oldies station where you never encounter anything you haven't grown to love over the years. At one point, when a trapped civilian asks Stallone if they have a chance, I expected Sly to say, "Calm down, lady, I've done this in a dozen other movies." God bless you, Rog.
Oh,
so,
man.
Die Hard, the section that we like to call
Die Hard DNA.
I almost jumped the gun there.
Yeah, I was a little confused.
In my desperation to have this meet the ticking clock that's been assigned for this episode, we've got to hard out.
But it's all right.
So we're moving along.
Gas.
Just relax. We'll find the right balance. We'll find the right balance.
Just relax.
In terms of disaster movie chronology, from Towering Inferno to Die Hard, from Airport to Die Hard 2. These things are all in a conversation with each other, all of these movies. And again, similar to Die Hard, it also has a large, diverse ensemble cast trapped in a confined space. It's the lead character is a down-on-his-luck, blue-collar, everyman, East Coast hero who has to put his body on the line to get the job done.
God.
Come hell or high water,
There's
literally.
only a few of us, but we get the job done.
We're out there like putting our bodies on the line for civilians.
I pulled my back getting up from this chair.
I literally pulled a neck muscle sneezing this morning. So that's how much of a badass I am.
Yeah.
This also had kind of Die Hard with a Vengeance vibes, right? The trucks, the tunnels in New York City.
Well, it's again, one of the things that this movie does in a rich tradition is working class heroes.
Yep, very much
Which
so.
I always agree with and like.
Yeah, and I like seeing like these characters that work for the city and stuff.
I love it.
Do their thing.
Because it feels like real life. Like we're missing that in a lot of contemporary.
And some of those actors are well cast here, like Mark Rolston and Dan Hedaya and guys like that.
Dan Hedaya, I've never seen him in a role like this before, where he's kind of like a tough action hero type.
Yeah, he's got he's usually plays a scumbag.
I'll always think of from the scene in Clueless when he says the thing that's no longer true, which is
everywhere
in LA takes 20 minutes.
Now it's an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
We also have an Al Powell-esque, lovable African-American uniformed beat cop played by Stan Shaw.
Who I accidentally double featured because I watched this and Snake Eyes within a 24-hour
I was hoping that
period.
wouldn't come up, but I had a feeling it would. We'll scratch that off the quiz. That'll save us another 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But it also has a lot of like Die Hard energy in terms of crawling through cramped shafts and dangerous situations. There's a lot of radio communication. We've got the power, shut down the power. We got to shut down the power. And also another element, I think, is the general suspicion and hatred of authority and bureaucracy, and specifically city engineers who are put on blast.
Yeah, they're put on blast in this.
in this movie.
I actually would say it's not the engineers that are put on blast. It's the sort of bureaucrat, who who sort of says like, do what you have to do, but doesn't like
a woman that's basically Satan.
Yeah, it's like the worst woman character in one of these movies since Gates McFadden and Hunt for Red October, where you're like, why are you so mean?
But speaking of religious interpretation to this film, we'll dig into that in a little more detail when we get into Anatomy of an Action movie after this quick break. And we're back with Anatomy of an Action movie.
How was your break?
Fine.
Okay.
How was yours?
Fine.
Yeah, good.
All right.
Good talk.
It's a new thing I'm bringing to the show.
I hate it.
Okay. I'll
is
stop
it in place of the other thing that's probably really annoys people, which is the Tenet riff?
Okay.
The Anatomy of an Action movie where we explore the tenets.
We live in a Twilight world.
There's no friends at dusk.
Oh my God. Let's
all just calm down.
How much tea have you had today?
I did have a pretty big coffee.
Okay. I had two.
And then a cup of tea.
Oh.
You want to know what I put in the tea?
Yeah, what's in there?
Honey.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sweet.
For my voice.
Yeah.
My voice is my livelihood. My instrument. So the premise of this movie is as follows. The first premise of the first tenet of Anatomy of an Action movie is the premise. The premise is when a freak accident causes both ends of an underground tunnel to collapse, a group of random strangers find themselves trapped. The only person seemingly capable of helping them is Kit Latura, Sylvester Stallone. Love that name.
It is a good name.
A disgraced former EMS chief seeking redemption for his role in a past tragedy. And the ticking clock is, can Kit help guide the squabbling survivors to safety through this subterranean carnival of death before the tunnel collapses and floods with water from the river above? So question for you as a ex-New Yorker, East Coaster, is this a
Not
real...
Not always New York.
Is this... it lives on in our hearts.
Yeah.
Is this a real tunnel? Is it a real place?
I guess it would be the Lincoln Tunnel. Yeah. And, what I like about it is that it feels like, I don't know. It does get a good sense of like, this is what New York feels like. This is how it moves. Yeah. This is how it operates.
How it begins is quite...
Yes.
But I felt it was a little bit hellish. Like how the movie, maybe because...
I want to talk about that too.
But even before they go to underground.
This movie...
But tell us but let me get out of the way here. Liam texted me the other day I was like, this movie's got no depth. It's not about anything. We're going to blaze through this thing. And then Liam texted me with a theory that kind of blew my mind that made complete sense. So enlighten us.
I think I have to talk a little bit about my experience of watching the movie to get to this theory. So I put this movie on Sunday morning, had some just baby was napping, wife was gone. And I was like, it features what I think is the worst scene of any movie we've talked about so far on the show, which is the scene when Amy Brenneman comes home to her apartment. No offense to Amy Brenneman. I cannot believe this is the movie she's in after Heat. Like, give Amy Brenneman better roles. What are we doing?
She's great in this, but he does her dirty.
Yeah. So she gets into her apartment. She opens a letter that a play that she's written has been rejected. She like stumbles around her apartment in this like Isabella Johnny from Possession style, like flailing, and then like sees cockroaches, finds a mouse in her drawer. And I just was like, why are we spending so much time with this character? Like, this is bizarre. This is a Sylvester Stallone movie. Where's Sly? Where's Sly? She decides this is the moment she's leaving New York. She decides she's moving back to like Indiana or wherever she's from. She gets in her car, heads towards the Lincoln Tunnel. Then we cut to Viggo Mortensen playing this like athlete jock.
This is set in a world where a rock climber is a bigger celebrity than Michael Jordan.
Yeah, he's a rock climber. It's Viggo Mortensen. He's, this is probably one of
Can you name one rock climber? One.
Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible 2.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So he's like at a board meeting. We're spending all this time watching him. Like he talks about his company. Like he's like moving from being a rock climber to like a media guy. Then we get into the car with J.O. Sanders and his wife and his daughter. And it's revealed that J.O. Sanders is a philanderer. He's cheated on his wife. So we get like all this time with these characters, which feels in line with like a disaster movie, right?
It's
like
classic tradition, soap opera
then
style storylines.
We get this storyline with George is his name Tyrell, the guy?
Yes.
George Tyrell, played by
Sadly
Stan
not
Shaw.
from the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner.
Maybe not. And his relationship with a bureaucrat in the city's sort of like she's like she works for the city and like does some kind of like bridge and tunnel work.
Her name is, yeah.
So we get all this time with these back characters.
Yeah.
And they all get in the tunnel, and there's like an explosion, and they all get buried in the tunnel. And then, like 30 minutes into the movie, why does my voice keep doing this? Sylvester Stallone shows up. And we have a sense that there's a backstory there, but we don't know what it is. And so I'm watching this, I'm like, why does it take so long for Stallone? Because like this has a little bit in common with, say, a cliffhanger.
It doesn't feel like a Stallone vehicle.
No,
right?
he feels like a peripheral.
It's like for the first part of it, it's like an ensemble piece. And Stallone's? It's almost like a bunch of guys and Sylvester Stallone.
So he's a cab driver, but he doesn't get into the tunnel, which surprised me. He exits the explosion happens, and he's outside the tunnel. So he's a former EMS guy.
Yeah, it doesn't do the obvious choice in that regard.
He's not stuck in there. But that's key to the interpretation of this thing. So he ends up, he's a EMS guy with like a little bit, like he got some people killed. It's probably almost the same thing as Cliffhanger, but they just never show
hero,
it.
Classic
Haunted hero.
stuff.
He ends up, it turns out he was like the head of the EMS, but he's lost his job and it's been taken over by, who's the actor?
Mark Ralston.
From
Aliens.
Who's great in a lot of good movies.
Tons of great stuff, yeah.
Mark Ralston gets hurt, he dies.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
So Kit Latura, Sylvester Stallone, ends up the head of the EMS guy. And his solution is to go down into the tunnel and save these people. And they don't believe him, they're skeptical of him, and he's saving them, he's helping them. And then he decides we can go hide in the former living quarters of the guys who were building this tunnel. And he finds a way in. And what's the first thing he sees when he goes in there? A statue of Jesus Christ. And it's incredibly unsubtle, but that's when it hit me, which is this is a Jesus movie. This is a movie about a guy who is sent down below from, above the like they're down below, they're on earth, right? They're fallible humans. One is a philanderer, one is like
adulterer,
one is adulterer. One
sinners.
One is given up on her hopes and dreams. There are crucially prisoners in there.
Yes,
that
criminals.
One is played sadly by Sage Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's son. He passed away very tragically, and it's his job to lead them to safety. Literally, the movie is called Daylight.
Yeah,
and there is even a false god in this movie, which is Viggo Mortensen, who's like, I can lead you guys to safety, and they all believe him. And they follow him, and he almost gets one of the prisoners killed, right? So suddenly you have Viggo Mortensen climbing to the top, sort of harnessing himself in to climb up. He's got this prisoner, I believe played by Sage Stallone, following him. By the way, it's interesting that it's Stallone's son who's in that role, right? And Stallone comes in, he's like, you're harnessing yourself, that's going to collapse and fall on you. Like, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And Viggo Mortensen's like, what do you know?
He disses him pretty hard, right?
And then he's killed by falling debris when the thing collapses. And then they're left with Stallone, who then spends a bunch of time convincing them that he knows what he's doing to get them out. He leads them to safety. Most of the team gets out, except he and Amy Brenneman. He goes back to save a fucking dog because that's who this character is in this movie. Falls into the water, and then Brenneman tries to save him. She falls in. They get to what is, I'd say, arguably the lowest point in the movie. Everyone else gets up to the surface, and then we cut to black. And we hear the sound that you hear, bubbles underwater, and then a flashlight hits something. And the first thing we see in the shadows in the dark is the Jesus statue again.
Right.
This is absolutely a Sylvester Stallone as Jesus movie.
It was a really interesting theory, and it completely tracked. But because when I saw the Jesus statue sequence, I was sort of, wow, this is stunningly unsubtle. But I didn't put two and two together about how that actually permeated through the rest of the film. And I think you're totally right. And it made me really kind of like this film a lot more.
Did you?
By the way, I actually, like, the first time I saw it, I texted you and I said, this movie fucking sucks.
Yeah, you were not into this.
Because I've just felt it was. So Rob Cohen is an interesting filmmaker in the sense that I think he has I'll try and be as diplomatic as I can here.
Yes.
I think he has very questionable taste as a filmmaker. And at the same time, he knows how to make very entertaining
visceral
films.
movies. Yeah.
He's like, you know, if you look at some of the other films he's made, like Stealth was one of his
I've
films
never seen
that was
that.
like a big...
With Travolta?
No, it's Josh Lucas,
Travolta's
Jamie Foxx, and Jessica Biel. And it's like a great idea. It's like a fighter jet that is AI, but it was like $100 million, and it's all very like broy and like a little tacky, and just a kind, you know. And he did the first Fast and the Furious movie, you know. He knows how to kind of make popcorn entertainment that's like slick and well done.
I like that first Fast and Furious movie a lot. Actually, I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's great, and it's some amazing stunt work in it. And he does a film that we'll talk about later that I'm actually very partial to. But
which one?
I'm not going to say it because it's going to come up in the quiz. So, and we've already got one question scratched off.
Sorry, love you.
But
can I make two more points about the Jesus thing?
Sure.
One is that Sarah, wife of J.O. Saunders, is the ultimate non-believer. She's the one who's like, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah,
and
that's
then the film lingers on her face when she gets out putting the oxygen mask. So she's been converted. And then finally, when Amy Brenneman and Sylvester Stallone get out of the water, he can't breathe, and she puts him in her arms in like a classic Pieta, meaning like the Mary Magdalene figure is holding Jesus.
Yeah, I was wondering what her comp would be in this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's exactly
they don't necessarily
it,
perfectly fit.
No, I don't, and I think it would be like kind of. I mean, this movie is already incredibly unsubtle, so
I think it's just more. Yeah, it's the broad caricatures. Like in the way that they're drawn in the first sort of 15 minutes really bothered me. In particular, the Amy Brenneman character. But I want to talk about her in more detail in a subsequent section. Let's move on to our let's talk about the hero of this movie that you're saying is potentially a Christ analog.
The Last Temptation of Sly.
Sly plays this character of Kit Latura. I mean, look, we've talked before. I love Stallone.
Oh, he's great.
I think I'll pretty much watch him in anything. I think similar to Willis, he's widely regarded as not understood of how brilliant an actor he is because he has a very established movie star persona that he can sometimes coast on.
But he's an intellectual and a thoughtful guy, you know? So
yeah. And what I like about this character, because there's not too much that's
it's not a complicated
original
character. Yeah,
it's not that original as a character, but I really like that he has a thick skin and can take insults and abuse without it affecting his ability to do his job or the way he treats people, which I think is a really realistic aspect of like paramedics and EMS like people, because you're dealing with like all kinds of people from society, like drug addicts, criminals.
Yeah,
it's similar to the Christ. Like you have to take a kind of an oath.
Well, turn the other cheek.
You could be a neo-Nazi has had their throat cut, who might be the worst person in the world, and you, as your oath is, you have to treat them.
Hippocratic oath.
Exactly. Right. That's the word I was groping for.
He grabbed me.
not literally. That would be hideous. Oh no,
Liam, what's that word?
Oh gosh, I'm cancelled. I'm cancelling myself. I think that is a really cool aspect of the character, because like we're saying, Mortensen treats him like shit. All the characters treat him like shit, but it never affects. He never takes any of it personally. And Stallone is really good at like playing a low status guy that everybody treats like shit.
So I want to say to that point that this is my favorite mode of Stallone, the sad, mournful
Me too.
Stallone. I think
he's brilliant at it.
He's very good in Cliffhanger, doing something similar in that movie.
Sad Stallone is like just
because
works.
I gotta say, it's like I like Cobra. I love Cobra. I kind of like the Rambo movies. I like Rocky quite a bit, but I am not. Almost never interested in Stallone trying to be a tougher guy. I think Stallone kind of has the soul of a poet. Like Tulsa King, not a good show. in my opinion. He's great in it. He's so good. And when he's given a chance to emote and like, you know, kind of have a redemption arc in these movies, it works really, really well. And I think Stallone, he's a little bit like a Chris Hemsworth, where it's like, give this guy something to do besides being like a beefcake and like Hemsworth's Extraction movies, entertaining, you know, good, solid, late action movies. Not his most interesting work. When he plays like Thor or he's in Black Hat, I'm like, I'm much more into this. Like, I like it when it's not so tough guy.
Like Willis, Stallone is at his most interesting when he balances vulnerability with sort of a can-do machismo action hero thing. But when he's just the action hero, when he's just doing a Stallone vehicle, like, did you ever see the Get Carter remake that he did?
The one Michael Caine's in it.
Michael Caine is in it.
Michael Caine. Yeah, no, I've never seen it.
Get Carter is just an example of one of those kind of movies that the character isn't particularly dimensional. It's just, hey, Stallone being cool. But when he's vulnerable, like he is in something like Copland,
Copland,
he can really break your heart.
He's really good in Demolition Man too. Is this kind of man out of time? It's different, but it works.
He's best when he's like off balance or he's like lower status.
Yeah, because he's a more interesting guy than Rambo.
Yes,
like the part that he's most. The first Rambo, by the way, is mournful Stallone.
Absolutely.
2 and 3 and. They all I think they make a mockery of the original Rambo, which I think is a great fucking movie.
Yeah.
I gotta rewatch it.
I mean, First Blood's phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal.
First Blood. I think it's a killer
masterpiece.
Killer movie. Yeah, amazing.
So Stallone is really, really solid in this picture and holds everything. He's the glue that really holds it all together. And he does a good job
of making the antagonism, the environment, and the suspicion of the people around him, because there's no villain in this movie.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. Is there's no villain other than the tunnel itself.
Yeah,
which at one point,
and you could maybe
Stallone rages against the tunnel as if it's a person.
But he's talking to God in that moment. That's why, again, it's kind of like he's. Like, there's in lieu of a villain, it's like, you let this happen thing. It's totally God. He's talking to God.
Yes.
He's Jesus at his lowest point, talking to God.
Yeah. No, it does make complete sense. And so, yeah, there isn't really a villain per se other than the general, like the vibe. The vibe of like, I do find that it does irritate me. Like if I was in this situation, this is why what annoys me in movies is when characters act in ways that just that are like to service the plot and not what you would actually do.
You mean like you'd want all the
if a paramedic comes in to save me, I'm not going, oh, I read that you were involved in some scandal. I'm like, I'm so fucking glad you're here. What the fuck do we do?
Yeah, but they had to invent something
exactly,
for the
but
movie.
It's not believable that they would act that way, and that the way that they persecute him, to use the sort of biblical language, it's just so excessive. Like as if everybody in New York is reading about. Do you know anyone that is in a scandal, an EMS person that was in a scandal in LA?
Yeah,
like it's just not believable. And even if someone did come to rescue you, what has it got to do with the situation? And they're all so indignant about it. Like J.O. Sanders, like I've got a daughter here, and if you were involved in a scandal, I want to know about it. It's like shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I want to
just listen to this guy.
Yeah.
He clearly knows what he's doing.
Totally.
So I find that manufactured drama really annoying and unbelievable.
Right.
But I want to move on to talk about the lady of this picture.
Whoa,
Tom Jones drifting over the valleys. Amy
Brenneman.
As this, I do love a movie where a playwright gets to be the action hero. Yeah. you can see how that would appeal to me.
It's like Jonesy in The Hunt for Red October for me.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of I think it's a really good performance, even though I think I do think it's a good performance, even though I think the director is like undermining her at every turn.
Yeah, that's actually the problem. It's not her performance. It's tough to hear her not with a Southern accent, first of all, because her performance in Heat is grafted into my way.
But I was a fan of Amy Brenneman because of NYPD Blue, where she plays a really these three characters that she played in quite a short period of time of her character on NYPD Blue, who was a sort of kind of like quite sexually frank. I wouldn't necessarily say promiscuous per se, but was kind of like quite sexually confident, sexually aggressive NYPD officer, as I recall. And then her character in Heat that is quite sort of innocent and not really worldly,
right?
And then this character that's this penniless, struggling playwright. But I there's a couple of points I just want to make about her. So it's so exaggerated that the level of her poverty, that it really just make her seem just like she is a grosso, living the grosso life.
Yeah,
like she opens her sock drawer and it's full of cockroaches, you know. But and the other thing, so she's got rats in it, and her apartment looks. It's just so over the top level of disgusting. I get that, you know, living in New York isn't necessarily
it's just
a picnic,
but like fuck
but
off.
it's ridiculous.
I mean, did I have cockroaches in my apartment in Queens?
One would
in
like
2000?
to hope not.
I did. Yeah. But like that happens.
But
like,
did you have a rat in your underwear drawer?
No, I did have I did have a mouse in the kitchen. But that's living in New York City. The way they treat this, like she hasn't. This has never happened to me before. Like it's just.
Well,
absurd.
well, maybe I'm just too. You know.
But you lived in New York.
I didn't live in New York. I did spend a lot of time there when I was a playwright working in the theater world, and I was around that.
I guess
that
you're
world.
not, but yeah, no, that shit happens. I never had a rat.
But here's so fair enough. You've mounted a defense of that.
It's the hysterical way that it's portrayed that is the problem.
Here's my biggest issue with her, right? Because there's sympathy towards this character. I'm talking about the character. She's a playwright. It's a hard road. I get it. She has a poster of cats on the wall.
Fuck that.
Maybe she sucks as a playwright, and maybe she has horrifying taste.
Yeah.
Because I don't know a single playwright worth their salt that would have a cat's poster on the wall.
It's just very broad. Well, what
exactly. It's just those kind of details piss me off because they break the reality. They're just like, oh, it's theater. It's all lumped into the same thing.
It's bad production design.
It's bad production design.
She should have like a poster for like
direction.
Yeah.
You know, it's it makes you think this character is gross, hysterical, is probably a terrible playwright.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem to doesn't
that's
write
a deep
anything.
Cut. It feels like, you know, it feels like New York portrayed by a tourist.
Yes.
Yes. He's not a New Yorker.
So and there's
Angels
also,
in America poster would have like
exactly, you know, Top Girls from a London production, or a Donmar Warehouse.
Phil, you're speaking of my language.
A poster on the wall actually is a really key piece of art direction. It's going to tell you a tremendous amount about that character,
right?
And to do something that lazy and basic pisses me off.
Yeah, it's bad.
You know, so
production designers, you're on blast.
I think I really like Amy Brenneman as an actor. And
this has nothing to do with her, but the movie
her performance is very good.
It doesn't do her any favors.
Exactly. She's set up to fail, and then there's a really unflattering close-up of her where I just feel he does her so dirty in the way he photographs her. You know, because she's a beautiful woman, and it doesn't matter. The character is down on her luck and all that, but I just feel like she's really kind of mistreated in this movie, and she's such a good actor. The action of this movie is decent. Decent.
Yeah, it works. George's death scene when he dies, like the build up to that, is very powerful, and I think that Rob Cohen understands how to use the action to create the character dynamics. So I think, I will probably talk about George Tyrell, but I thought that sequence was moving to me. Yeah,
he's particularly charming and has that kind of Al Powell like,
and the movie does him a service
and warmth. You know, like Reginald Vale Johnson, very warm actor. Stan Shaw often plays kind of hard ass, plays a lot of hard ass characters.
Snake Eyes, he's so like balanced in that movie.
Yeah, he's a mixture of both.
He's really good actor.
Good stuff, and he's around a lot in these 90s movies. The action, I don't have too much to say about. It's fine. It's solid. There's some good sequences. The initial explosion sequences is
very well staged,
pretty fun.
Yeah.
But the giant fan sequence, and then the bit where
that's so ridiculous.
That really reminded me. This is for the Brits. It reminded me of a TV show called The Crystal Maze, which presented by Richard O'Brien.
Oh my God!
Rocky Horror Picture Show fame.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a real 90s staple, where it ended with a sequence in like a glass dome where you had to pick up tickets from, and you had to there were like a certain amount of them, 10% of them would be like golden tickets and the rest would just be paper, and they're all blowing around and you had to like pick out the gold tickets to win a prize or some shit. And anyway, it gave me a real Crystal Maze flashback.
It feels a little absurd.
Yeah, but it was a cool set piece. It was kind of a cool set piece, that bit. The action in the movies, like everything else in this movie, it's 3-star.
Yeah.
It's like perfectly fine.
No, it's a 3-star. It's a really fun movie.
Let's move on to the Die Hard Oscars.
Let me put on my green vest.
Put on with a flashlight. He looks good in that vest.
He looks great.
He looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he looks cool, but sure.
I think he looks cool. I want one of those.
Should I get you one
for
Christmas?
Strut around my kitchen,
yeah,
making a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
So the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line nominee, not a brilliantly written film, I would say, from a dialogue standpoint, but there are some good ones. I like this line. The person who says it can't be done is always interrupted by the one who just did it.
Yeah.
Says the character of Wilson, played by Mark Rolston, the EMS chief, immediately before his anticlimactic death, off-screen death. So this movie does have that similar like Die Hard quality of like hubristic characters are humbled, often quite brutally. The character of Roy Nord says the line, "George, I was born 6 weeks premature. My own mother couldn't keep me in." A line that Viggo manages to sell. They're going to save us to death.
Viggo's good.
That was quite an interesting.
They're going to save us.
They're going to save us to death. That's Stephen, played by J.O. Sanders.
Right.
That's when they're basically drilling, like they're trying to drill into the tunnel.
So annoying.
Like, there's always a chance. That's one of Kit's catchphrases.
I gotta tell you, I don't have a pick here.
It's pretty rough. The last one, a real like kind of a groaner, but kind of good at the same time for a 3-star movie. I think I'll ride with you. One condition: we gotta take the bridge.
That's it. That's
Cue the music.
That's the winner.
Good one to end on.
Yeah.
As perfectly corny as the whole film.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's it.
The Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film, quite a few nominees. Barry Newman as Norman Bassett, the tunnel operations supervisor. I'd prefer if he was called Bertie Bassett for another British
I have no memory of this guy.
You don't remember him?
Yeah.
70s legend. He's the guy he comes in as I loved his intro where he's like 36 channels and nothing's on.
Oh yeah,
he's like
this guy's
guy.
good. Yeah,
I buy him. I buy him in that job.
Yeah. Okay.
Stan Shaw as George Tyrell, the courageous transit cop. Amy Brenneman as Madeline, the playwright action heroine. Vanessa Bell Calloway as Grace, the tunnel operations dispatcher, who's Stan Shaw's girlfriend in the film.
Yes, sad.
Danielle Harris as Ashley Crichton. Shout out to our Last Boy Scout.
And in Last Boy Scout, that's right.
Watch out, old Satan Claus is out there. And Trina McGee as LaTonya, the juvenile delinquent. I thought she was very good.
She is really good in this movie. I like what the movie does with the prisoners, like bonding with the non-prisoners. My pick is Stan Shaw as George Tyrell. I think it's just a very soulful performance.
I'm going to give it to Amy Brenneman because I think she does a good job with everything working against her. I think she does a really good job.
Yeah, that's good.
The Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie. This was there's a queue out the door for this. Almost every character sucks.
Yeah, they're not great.
They're a bunch of panicky, annoying idiots.
Yeah, well,
I hated so many of these characters. Yeah. Sarah Crichton, played by Karen Young, who is the annoying, scorned wife who constantly moans.
She got it.
No wonder he cheated on her.
Oh!
Stephen as...
I would like to say that the views and opinions on this podcast do not reflect everyone on this podcast.
And then her husband, Stephen, the loudmouth, remorseful adulterer / devoted father. But
by the end of the movie, he kind of comes around.
But he's also kind of a dick when they're the EMS people he's been saved and he's like, don't touch me.
Well, because he feels so bad about the people that get left behind. It reads that way to me, at least.
Okay. Huge J.O. Sanders fan.
Oh, he's great.
By the way. Check out his incredible uncredited cameo in Kiss of Death from 1995.
Oh, wow.
One of his greatest little
He's the real deal, that guy.
He's the shit.
He's a real
awesome
deal.
JFK, amazing, incredible legacy of work. EMS Chief Wilson, played by Mark Rolston. Miss London, she's the arrogant city engineer suit, played by Rosemary Forsyth.
It's that lady. That lady wins. It's her or Sarah, the wife.
She is the worst. But I want to give a shout out to the 3 punk criminals who come straight out of the 1980s video game Renegade.
Or bad dudes.
Or Knock. Or, it's just What? Talk about broad stereotypes. This
Yeah.
guy's got some ridiculous tattoo on his face.
Yeah.
That's just like that stuff was just like this. What is this?
Yeah, it's weird.
so
I kind of
broad.
forgot. I was like, wait, was that in this movie or a different movie?
So I'm going to give it to the main guy from the punks from Renegade. We do have an unusual award here, and we've given one of these out so far. This is a surprise for Liam. We've given one out before.
Wow, I'm getting an award. Thank you.
To JT Walsh in Executive Decision, but I've actually named it now. It's the Ellis Award for Rampant Egomaniacal Opportunism, which goes to Roy Nord, played by Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, we don't need to debate
This
that.
fucking guy has his own company. He's buying Super Bowl commercials. He has his own shoe line. He is a rock climber. He's like a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but he gets the reason I picked him because he sees Daniel Harris has a camera. He's like, ooh, there's an opportunity for me to be hero boy here.
Fuck that guy.
Know? But it's quite a cool subversion that his fate.
Yeah. Well, because he sucks, and also he's a false god.
But a good performance by Viggo. I like the way that he's like when he spits, he has the swagger of a jock. It's like, well, it's a good performance. Best death presented by.
No more table next time. You have a chance to. What is happening? Kill someone.
You can't shake the Walken.
Hesitate.
We're going to Broadway.
What is the song from Cats? I don't know.
Gosh, I've literally
the clowns. From
I have
Cats?
blocked it from my mind.
Yeah. Phil has a Mr. Tumnus tattoo on his chest that he's just trying
to... well, I never was there ever.
I did not expect that in an episode about daylight, but moving on.
The guy casually eating his lunch who gets torched by the initial explosion.
Oh, yeah, that's sad.
Roy Nord eating it. Like Icarus, he flew too close to the sun. Or Ellis. And best sad death... Eleanor Trilling, played by Claire Boom, who just dies quietly in her husband's
Talk about a classic
arms.
British actress. Isn't she British?
Is she?
I think she is.
I didn't know her. I couldn't place her.
I'm gonna go with the guy eating his lunch because it's kind of mean spirited and I like.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of like a fun, weird death. But I'm going for Eleanor. I'm going to pour one out for Eleanor.
Okay.
It was actually quite moving the way it's done because it was like, wow, this film has done one subtle thing. Someone died in kind of a realistic way of hypothermia, and it's quite touching.
That's good. That's good.
So
it's
I actually
sad
thought that was a rare moment of subtlety.
I like the actor who plays her husband very much.
Yeah, but they're funny at the beginning where they're obsessed with like etiquette and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just said that to you. That was very rude, Mr. Latura.
I know. It's so funny.
Could you be more of a stereotype?
I know. It's like actually nuts.
All right, we'll wrap this up with the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz after this quick break. And we're back with the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz where the scores can really change.
Phil. I don't know why.
One of these has already been ruined. Thanks a bunch.
So what?
But luckily I have a backup. Okay, question number 1. Filmmaker Rob Cohen would go on to direct which 2018 action disaster movie that could be described as Die Hard in a Hurricane?
Clue.
The film stars Maggie Grace, Toby Kebbell and Ralph Ineson, and it involves a heist on the U.S. Treasury building in Alabama during a hurricane.
Is it Hurricane Heist?
It's the Hurricane Heist.
Thank God.
The Rob Cohen movie that I actually like.
Yeah. I like Triple X.
It's fun.
I like Triple X.
It's fun. Question number 2. This is my backup because I had to pull out the Stan Shaw one. Screenwriter Leslie Bowen is no stranger to the disaster movie genre. Which 1997 disaster movie did Bowen also write?
1997. Give me a call out.
The film stars James Bond and Sarah Connor.
Linda Hamilton and Sean Connery? Timothy Dalton?
No.
Pierce Brosnan?
Yep.
Dante's Peak.
Yeah,
Jesus.
he wrote both.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird that disaster movies were having this kind of resurgence.
I've never seen Dante's Peak.
I haven't seen it either, but there was a plethora of them around
James
this time.
Bond
Then you had Deep Impact and Armageddon,
Volcano.
and Volcano, in which Tommy Lee Jones plays like a city worker type guy.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. This is a doozy. This is a Ned Ryerson. Question number 3. Barry Newman played the character of Kowalski in the iconic car chase movie Vanishing Point. Which fellow member of the Daylight cast also played the character of Kowalski in the 1997 made-for-TV remake of Vanishing Point?
Is it one of the people under the ground?
It is.
Is it Clue?
Although Kowalski is a Polish name, the actor is Danish-American.
Oh, Viggo.
Viggo
Mortensen.
How weird. This was a really weird piece of trivia that I stumbled across. Viggo Mortensen played Kowalski in the 1997 version of Vanishing Point, which also starred Jason Priestley. I'll leave you with that.
Wow.
Something to think about.
Interesting.
On those long cold nights.
Yeah, those long cold
bit of a head
nights.
scratcher. That's about it for today.
I have nothing new. I enjoyed The Last Temptation of Sly.
Look, this movie, it's a 3-star movie. It's totally watchable. There's some great actors in it.
Sunday afternoon movie.
Absolutely. It's a good afternoon snoozer.
Yeah, it's a snoozer.
It's a nice afternoon snoozer.
But in a good way. You know, gone are the days.
It's kind of a comfort blanket movie. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, Stallone's very good in it.
Stallone's good in it. There's some other good performance in it. Very watchable. I was a little bit rough on it, but the second time around, I enjoyed. Now and again, I like to just let loose. Cut it the fuck loose.
Whoa.
that was a Sam Elliott Roadhouse reference.
I'm Liam G. Billingham on Twitter. Phil is also on X. I'm sorry, I keep doing that.
That's it. The legal papers have been filed.
Oh, jeez. I'm going to get sued. Phil, you got a blue check recently. Now, how much are you paying for that a month?
It's totally worth it, guys.
Yeah. Link in bio. At DieHardOAB on Twitter, diehardoab@gmail.com.
I also want to apologize for swearing so much in this episode. My dad hates it when I swear this much because they raised me properly and I've just got a potty mouth.
I don't know.
So sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay, Dad.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
Next time on the show, we are doing Turbulence.
It's Die Hard on a plane, but with very few passengers. I'm excited for this one.
Me too. We're going to do a deep dive on the late, great Ray Liotta. It's a really fun movie. Tons of Die Hard DNA in this one.
Interesting gender politics, the whole kit and caboodle. So we'll be back next time with a completely unhinged Ray Liotta.
See you then, guys.
Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.